Maybe. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Strategic Veteran for a surprise live today. I'm your host, Adam Peters, transitioning from the military. Man, we know that can be a tough road. And sometimes, despite all the planning and preparation, it doesn't go the way we expect. Today's guest, he really knows that reality firsthand. I'd like to introduce you to Trevor Greenberg, who spent 7 years in the Army as an infantryman. Woo-hoo. Rising to the rank of Staff Sergeant, all while earning an MBA from Auburn University, War Eagle. But when he got out, instead of stepping into a high-powered business role like many others told that they will, he found himself working in a university library, telling student athletes to keep their voices down for $8 an hour. Oh, man. That stark contrast between expectation and reality has set him on a path of perseverance, adaptability, and ultimately success. Over the past decade, Trevor has built an accomplished career in project management, leading complex initiatives across multiple industries. One of his proudest achievements, bringing the first Israeli-made interior drone system to the U.S. for security applications, overseeing its first installation, testing, and commercial sale. He's also a co-inventor on 3 U.S. patents and has been published in Security Magazine. But right now, he's in transition again after a recent layoff, proving that the journey doesn't end once you make it in the civilian world. Today, he's here to share his lessons learned, the power of networking, and why giving back to fellow veterans is key to long-term success. Trevor, brother, I know you've been waiting for this for a while, so welcome to the show, man.
Thanks. I need you to read that to my wife, making me sound like a hero.
Yeah, everybody says that, man. Everybody says something to that effect. Dude, welcome to the show, and let's just kick this thing off in true strategic veteran style. Where did you grow up, and what inspired you to join the Army?
I grew up in Southern California, Orange County area. I'm a weird one where I got my bachelor's at San Diego State and graduated, still had the same job I had in college, just full-time instead of part-time. At Best Buy selling TVs and electronics. Didn't quite know what I wanted to be when I grew up, so I went to the recruiter and I applied for Army OCS as a civilian.
Okay, how'd that go?
Well, it didn't go well. I was told that you applied at the end of the fiscal year, so we're all full. Sorry, try again. So me being the rocket scientist that I pretend to be on TV, I went back the next month and said, new fiscal year, you've got the slots, right? Well, go ahead and apply. Oh, we already front filled the first class from the people that we had overfilled from last year.
Knowing full damn well now that you know what you know, they could have just put you in the next class.
Well, so then they're like, well, do you want to join anyways?
Of course you do.
So I'm sitting there talking to the recruiter and I'm like, okay, well, if I'm not going anywhere in the civilian world right now as a recent college grad, might as well join the military, learn a skill, and, better myself for the future.
Mm-hmm.
So what do? I get sucked into an 18 X-ray contract.
Oh, God. Well, how did that go?
Well, I got recycled in basic because I got my shoulder blown out.
That'll do it.
Finished basic, went to airborne school, went over to the World War II barracks over at Bragg,
mm-hmm.
and went through SOP-C, which is the prep course for selection. Made it all the way through to the land nav week and realized my land nav skills suck. I am not going to pass this class, and there is no amount of remedial training that can help me. So I proved to myself that I could at least make it through the difficulty of, hey, the beatings will continue because morale is not improved.
Yeah.
So I rang the bell, and I'm probably the only person you'll ever meet that says, I rang the bell, I quit, it wasn't for me, I didn't get hurt, I didn't get screwed, no TAC had it out for me. There was none of that. It wasn't the right fit for me.
Well, I think there's power behind that, man. It takes a certain level of vulnerability and accountability to be able to admit that to people instead of spin a story. I went to selection and I didn't make it for whatever XY excuse. when, maybe it's okay that you just wasn't for you. I'm really curious though, isn't SOPSI supposed to prepare you for land nav?
Well, they teach you land nav, but if you suck at land nav, you suck at land nav. You're not going to magically pick it up in 3 weeks.
I guess land nav came easy to me, so I find that hard to believe. Like, what was it about land nav that just screwed you over?
I had never done it before.
Well, I mean, you did say you grew up in Southern California in Orange County, so probably not a lot of time spent in the woods when you were growing up. And I mean, that's the difference, right? I grew up in Southern Indiana, and I was forced to play outside from sun up to sundown, basically. So my playground was the woods.
Yeah, the most I got for land nav was using a Thomas guide. If you can remember back that part of one of those. Yeah, I sure can. I remember early in my career traveling and having to, stop at a gas station when you get to a new state to buy their atlas, right? So that you know where you're going. It's like, I think about that sometimes too, right? Like where we're at here today in 2025, particularly with kind of the direction I'm headed. And I'm like, what the fuck did I ever do before Google Maps or Apple Maps was a thing? Like, how did I get anywhere? Well, I'm old enough to remember when you had to print out the directions off MapQuest, and that was high tech.
Yeah, right. Well, we were doing that, man. Well, so when did you join?
04.
Okay, so you joined the year after I did. So you probably remember, particularly as a wonderful Army infantryman, all the 4-day passes, having to print off your travel pass, your MapQuest. Yeah, I remember all that too. Oh, dude, that's awesome. Anyway, so you ring the bell as an 18 X-ray. You never even went to selection then. So you never even made it that far. Okay. So what happens to you when you ring the bell? Are you needs in the Army at that point? You're going to end up at Bragg somewhere?
I'm already at Bragg.
So yeah, you're just staying.
So I just wind up down the street in the Deuce at the 82nd replacement.
Yeah.
And this was November of 04. So I distinctly remember get the second 325, get assigned to my company, Delta Company, and the next day, it's like right before Thanksgiving weekend. So my squad leader says, "You're coming over to my house for Thanksgiving." So I'm like, okay, no big deal.
That.
And he's like, bring, I can't remember what bourbon it was or what whiskey it was that he was particularly fond of. So me being the Californian that I am, I just go down to Food Line thinking, in California, you can buy liquor at any 7-Eleven, gas station, grocery store, anything. So I go down there and they're like, nope. They looked at me like I had just told them the worst joke ever when I asked, where's the liquor? So I show up with like a 6-pack of beer, and he looks at me and he's like, what is wrong with you?
Jesus, man.
And this is one of my first interactions with my new squad leader.
Oh, man. I'm curious, with not making the 18 X-ray program and Bragg being one of those places, how was life for you? And first of all, did you come in as an E4 with your degree? So you're in E4, so you're already going to get grief for that. I know that for a fact, right?
Yeah.
But the fact that because I assume you're being forthcoming, right? Saying that I quit, it wasn't for me. I assume you probably had to tell everybody else in your unit. You probably told them the same thing, right? So how much grief did you get throughout your time there for, just saying this isn't for me?
This is where the luck comes in. Because right when I got to my unit, we were on DRF1 and we deployed 2 weeks later.
Oh, so there was no time for anybody to haze you about the shit, right? Like, that's interesting too, because now you've got a chance to prove it. Like, you don't get to judge me just because I quit the 18 X-ray program because I decided it wasn't for me. Why don't you just judge me on my merits and how I perform, with you going down range right now, right? Like that's pretty cool, man. So I'm glad that was.
It was terrible.
Well, you're brand new, so it's going to be terrible either way.
Well, I was brand new and I was around an entire battalion of people who had literally just gotten back from the initial invasion. Like there was a plan that's not very well known, that the original plan to take BIOP was to drop a battalion of the 82nd in.
Yeah, well, we beat you to it with the 3rd
Well,
AD.
Yeah, but what you don't know is that battalion of the 82nd was rigged up, ready to go, waiting to load the bird before it got scratched.
So they were really not happy.
And that was my battalion, all the guys I was around.
Yeah, I have a similar story, man. I've told it several times on this show, but I got to my first duty station was Fort Stewart. Those guys had just been home maybe a month, 2 weeks to a month from the invasion, and taken over by as I got there as a brand new private. So I think we probably had similar experiences coming up in the Army at the same time.
Yeah, but the one thing that was nice was when we got the new guys in, I had my CIB already.
Yeah.
So I got some hazing, but there were other people to bother with because they just had their wings and that was it.
Oh, well, and I distinctly remember that too, because that was what made my life such a living hell. Like, so, 03, 04, until we came back, really, I was gone all of 05 on my first deployment, the end of 04 to all of 05, come back in 06, and then we switched to the ACU uniform. But the BDU days, you didn't even have a flag unless you had a combat patch. And then you have no rank and no CIB sewn on. And so it's like, oh God, you just stick out. It's super noticeable. So yeah, I get it. I understand that pain because once I had one, it's like everybody, you get the flag and the CIB and it's like, okay, nobody's messing with me
anymore.
Part of the club. Yeah, you're a big part of the club, right? So you talk about your time in service and some pivotal moments. And the one that stood out to you was the dichotomy between different company commanders, right? You had one deny you OCS and another one really later offered you the opportunity to go to OCS. So this seems to be a common trend in your career. You tried to come in as an officer and got dicked around by the recruiters. It sounds like you got dicked around by one company commander and another company commander saw the value in having you as an officer. Talk about that experience and how that shaped you as a leader later on.
Well, the thing that shaped me the most as a leader was the terrible ones that I had as an infantryman, because I came in as a college E4. So I came in at 24.
Mm-hmm.
And I had squad leaders that were younger than me who only knew the Army life.
Right.
And had been, they had been there during the invasion. They had been in multiple deployments. And I distinctly remember there was one day we were on gate guard in the truck. I was in the hatch. He was in the truck. And we were talking about how to build your credit. And I told him, what you do is you go get a credit card, charge as much as you can on it every month, pay it off every month, and that's how you build your credit. From personal experience, life experience.
Yeah.
And he's explaining to me, no, that's not how you do it. And he's trying to teach me how to build my credit. And I had to kind of say to him, have you ever had to pay rent out of a paycheck, not out of BAH? Have you ever had to pay for medical insurance? Have you ever had to do all the stuff that when you're in the civilian world, you take as granted that everybody does that, but in the military, we kind of forget a lot of that stuff happens. And he just was arguing with me that I was adamant that I was wrong. I didn't know what I was talking about. And my bachelor's degree was in economics.
You should have just gone to Credit Karma and been like, let's see your score, dude. We'll settle this once and for all.
We were in the sandbox.
Yeah, well, that's fair. I always found it interesting when people, so I also have a similar, not with credit score, but I had a leader who really fucked me hardcore when I first joined and told me that TSP was the biggest waste of time and I shouldn't contribute any money to TSP. So my entire career, what do you know, right? Like I didn't know anything. I joined at 17. I spent a year on the delayed entry program. right? So being indoctrinated for an entire year before I was indoctrinated, and then going to basic, not one time did anybody explain to me what TSP was, how valuable it was going to be to me, or educate me on like why I should be putting fucking money into this thing. And so, then I'm getting out and they're like, oh, I see you've got, almost 13 years as an Army infantryman. Where's your TSP? I was like, well, I had a leader when I first came in as a private who told me TSP was something I shouldn't even waste my time with. And you should have seen the look on some of these people's faces. They just went ghostly white and their jaws hit the table and they're like, you just got screwed. And I think about it to this day, man, with 4 deployments, think about how screwed I really got. Like I could be in a much better situation right now, particularly learning about all these programs. There's some really cool people out there doing some awesome work who have now made it available to you to take your TSP and roll it over into purchasing a franchise if that's something that you're interested in when you get out, or other ways to leverage that money to kind of better your life on the other side. And it kind of sucks, man. It kind of sucks to think about that I missed that opportunity to have a little nest egg, but I digress.
Hey,
here we are.
I have a fun TSP fact for you that most people don't know.
What's this?
I learned this because fast forward a couple of years after my transition, I was working for the VA. And you get a different TSP as a civilian than you did while you were in uniform. You can combine the two. But if your but I still have 2 because I have to. Because if you have non-taxable money, meaning money you put in while you were deployed in your TSP, you can't move that money into a different TSP. It has to stay in your uniform one.
Same one.
So I have 2 TSP accounts, 1 civilian, 1 military, and I can't combine them forever.
I mean, it'd be cool if you could combine them, but also it's like not bad to have 2 either, right?
Well, it's just more logins to have to remember and more places to look at things.
Well, it's 2025, and I know what your future holds, so get ready to have a whole bunch more logins to keep up with. Dude, I want to, before we, we're painting the picture of you and your military career, and so last question in this section is, a lot of service members find clarity in the military. I did, and a lot feel lost. So looking back, did your experience provide the direction you were seeking when you joined?
No, not even a little bit.
So what were you looking for when you joined then?
I guess you could say I was looking for a way out, because where I was a college graduate doing full-time work for the same job that I was doing part-time. I knew I didn't want to stay in the retail industry for the rest of my life. I had applied for jobs and really didn't get anywhere. So I didn't know where I wanted to go or what I wanted to do when I grew up. So I joined the military, as a young man who's lost his want to do.
Yes.
And I re-enlisted overseas on my 3rd deployment during the surge with my first wife.
Let me guess, she spent all your money before you got home like mine did.
No, she just cheated on me and left me.
Same difference, right?
Well, I paid off her student loans, so there was only so much money she could spend that I didn't already spend for her.
Right. Well, it's basically the same situation. You paid off her student loans and she left, and mine spent all my money and she left. So so results the same.
Well, and from my time in 2nd 325, I think my entire fire team went through the same story of divorce.
Oh,
just through different deployments, but we all had the same one.
Yeah, dude. Over 4 deployments, 100%, man. It's like, it's me on deployment number 2 going through it, and then deployment number 3, it's me taking care of one of my soldiers who's going through it, right? And the same thing with deployment number 4, probably more soldiers that I'm taking care of that are going through it, and it's a never-ending cycle. So, so you were looking for basically leverage from the military to be able to be more employable, which is absolutely not the case. And the perfect segue into part 2 of the show, the transition, your decision to get out, because we got hooked up because you found my content on LinkedIn and all the work that I'm trying to do to call attention to all the pitfalls of, transitioning out of the military. And man, it's been such a cool ride because these problems are universal, not just the United States military, but, we're talking to people in New Zealand, Australia, Austria, Denmark, Canada. A couple of people have reached out to me from places in Africa, and it's like, oh shit, like what have I stumbled onto? And like the stuff that we're talking about transition and all those pitfalls. And so just talk about your transition. First of all, what led to the decision for you to get out after 7 years? I imagine I can probably pick it out just because of the conversation we've had at this point. And what did transitioning out look like for you? If you don't mind explaining that.
Well, there were a couple of things. One is during that surge deployment, before I found out I was coming home to a divorce, I had re-enlisted to go to Benning for a trade doc assignment for 3 years. So I knew I was locked into Benning. I knew I was locked into trade doc. Come home, go through the divorce. I'm already on my PCS order, so I'm just figuring it all out, biding my time. Peace out. I moved in. Before that, I moved in with a buddy of mine who was on Rear D for the time I was waiting. Peace out. Moved to Benning. Before I checked in, I knew I was on a trade doc assignment at Benning. So as you'll kind of see in my career path, I'm a pretty bold person. I don't leave things to chance if I can avoid it. So I figured, okay, there's all these trade doc places on Benning. I know that they have the infantry test platoon there where they get to play with all the new toys. So while I'm on PCS leave, I go in to find out where their headquarters is, walk into the office and say, I'm in ACUs because, can't walk in civvies, but I go in, maroon beret, 2 pairs of aces on my sleeves, CIB, ERB in hand, and I go to the office and I'm like, I'd like to make an appointment to speak with the sergeant major. Okay, schedule the appointment, come back, sit down with the sergeant major with my ERB in hand, say, hey, I've got orders to come to Benning. I haven't been assigned anywhere yet. I haven't checked in yet. Can you pull me into your organization? I want to come here. I want to play with the toys. I'm an infantryman. I like doing infantry stuff. He looks at my ERB, looks at me. I'll take you, no problem. Leaves. It's gone for probably 15, 20 minutes. I'm just sitting in his office, relaxing, waiting. Comes back. He's like, can't have you. Can't take you. And I'm just going, what just happened? He's like, your heart's slotted for airborne school. No one can touch that if you're going to airborne school.
As an instructor?
Yeah.
So you're going to go be a black hat.
That was the plan.
Oh boy.
He's like, I would have taken you if I could, but airborne school is the one assignment that you can't break, I can't pull from.
At least he was honest with you.
Oh yeah. I mean, he was cool. He was a cool guy. Like he saw what was sitting in front of him, which was a mediocre at best infantryman with a really nice looking uniform.
Right. Like, this gotta work.
Well, ironically, that patch in the flag in the frame behind me on that desk behind me, that's the IR flag I wore for 2 deployments. And that's one of the patches I wore for 2 deployments back when we wore ACUs.
Yeah, I remember those days.
So, I leave. Okay, I'm going to the airborne school. I know that now. Get to the airborne school. I'm hanging out of the 30-foot tower, learning my class, doing all the stuff you do as a instructor in training. And remember that hurt shoulder I had that got me recycled in basic?
Let me guess. You heard it again.
Pops right out in front of students in the middle of the 30-foot tower exercise.
Yep.
So then when I'm walking out hurt, somebody recognizes me that knows me as a student.
Oh dear. Oh
So
man.
now I'm no longer an instructor in training. Now I go to ops.
Mm-hmm.
So dreams of that black hat, long gone now.
Shit. So how bad did you fuck the shoulder up?
Oh, I had to have surgery later on and torn labrum.
Yeah, I did that twice. That's what put me out. That's what got me the med board. I'm like missing 60% of it in my left shoulder. So I relate 1,000,000% to what you went through, because that's kind of, I wasn't on a 30-foot tower. In fact, I was never airborne, so it doesn't matter. But I walked around with it dislocated for like 2 or 3 days. I couldn't figure out what was actually going on with it until I like finally went to the aid station. I looked at our doc and I was like, I got a problem, sir. I'm like, I can't fucking move my arm. He's like, you're dumbass, your shoulder's not in the right place. Like, we need to fix this, and you need to go see, over at Madigan or something like that. He sent me immediately over there. The buddies, he's going to check you out. I'm afraid that you've really done something this time that you can't. There's no coming back from this one. So ultimately, I had the first surgery, got cleared to go back to work, and me being me as a leader, right? Like, you want to show up your Joes, the infantry mentality. And my pull-ups has always been my favorite exercise. I probably pushed it a little too hard after coming back. And we get on the pull-up bar, and in fact, it's the same kid that if you follow my LinkedIn, I just posted about his drill school graduation last week. I went to South Carolina to watch that. So dick measuring contest on the pull-up bars with this kid, and I destroyed my shoulder because I was too stubborn to fucking let him beat me. You know what I mean? And had the second surgery, and then some medical incompetence from a major, believe it or not. It ultimately ended my career. So I get it. So did the shoulder ultimately end your career?
No, I got out on time, sir, for good behavior.
I hope you claimed the shoulder at least, because it's a pretty significant chunk.
Yeah, I got some disability rating for my shoulder, amongst other things. But when I got sent over to ops, I was over there and I kind of had to decide. I had 3 years I had basically 2 years to decide, am I staying in or getting out?
Yeah.
I had already turned down OCS overseas because the way the 82nd worked was the CG had 82 what were called hip slots, where if you have a degree and your command sponsored you, sign a couple of pieces of paper and you have a class date for OCS. No interviews, no boards, none of that. And my company commander, while I was overseas, knew that I had a degree, so he was asking me if I wanted to do it. Now, bear in mind, I had just re-enlisted to go TRADOC, still had my first wife, and I knew what the plan would be if I had said yes. I get home. I'm home for about a month or two, go to Benning for OCS, off to OBC, whatever that is. And guess what? My year home is up shortly thereafter, so I'm going to a deploying unit, because this was back in 08, 09. Right after the start.
Yeah, the patch chart's still alive and well, and 11 months, man. That's all there was.
So I said no to that. I also turned down my one and only shot at EOD too, because EOD, if you're an E5 with a certain amount of time and grade, they won't take you.
Yeah.
But the loophole is, if you're overseas, time and grade doesn't count because you're overseas. And we had an EOD team embedded with us. I already had my clearance. So they were like, we'll do the interview. We'll do the bomb suit test. We can do all that at the COP in downtown Baghdad for you if you want.
So it really became a just kind of like the only option that made sense for you. You missed EOD. You turned down OCS. You damn sure probably didn't want to stay as ops at TRADOC after. Well, who knows where you would have gone after that, right?
But that was a semi-career ender, because I made my E6 when I was an ops guy at airborne school. So
right.
Didn't have the black hat, didn't have squad leader time,
Right.
So what am I going to do as an E6 infantryman with no squad leader time? I'm going to stay in E6 forever, for a long time, until I get to another line unit, get a squad, get that time, and maybe get picked up on the board and get a sequence number.
Yeah.
Even though forgot that one too. I passed Jump Master when I was at Bragg, in between deployments, but I failed PWAC. I passed JMPI, but failed PWAC. So I had everything except for one little thing to get Jump Master. So I go to Benning, and one of the things I've kind of noticed as I look back on my life is there's a lot of just, I guess it's luck, being in the right place at the right time for things. I was in ops, which meant Jump Master School and Pathfinder School both fell under HHC for the Airborne School, which means I knew who the branch chief for Jump Master was. I knew all the Jump Master instructors.
Mm-hmm.
And I went over there and I talked to him and I said, hey, I passed JMPI. I passed everything except for PWAC. I got a weak peak. I had a bad shoulder, so that's why they gave me a weak peak. I didn't want to blow out my shoulder before surgery.
Mm-hmm.
Can you call down there, get my records, and then we do PWAC up here, and I get certified as a Jump Master and do refresher. He looks at me, he's like, all right, we can do that. Normally I won't. Normally I would say no, but you're one of us. I know you. If I can validate everything you're saying is true, we'll do it. So, I at least got my Jump Master out of it.
Oh man, that's awesome. So take us to it's 0 day. You're done. You're signing out. You're released for good behavior, as you put it. What was the most shocking thing about transitioning out to you?
The funniest thing that happened to me was, you remember back in 11 when everybody was wearing Oakleys and sunglasses on post,
Yeah.
and the rule was no mirrored sunglasses.
Oh yeah.
Remember that? Well,
Yeah.
I had a pair of mirrored Oakleys. I'm literally signing my DD-214 before I walk out the door. And I had I think it was like a major, saw me, saw the sunglasses in my hand, and starts giving me grief about that they're not within regs and I shouldn't be wearing them and I shouldn't even have them with me. And I just said, Roger, sir. And walked out, put them on, and walked out that door because I had already signed my 214 in hand.
Which you forgot the whole little 48-hour rule thing, right? Like you're still subject to UCMJ for 48 hours after you sign your DD-214.
I'm trying to think of the best way to say this.
The give a fuck meter was broken.
Oh, no, that wasn't it. I had a CID scare 6 months prior where they were trying to threaten me with all kinds of things. So for that major to be even a blip on my radar after I had been dealing with CID, I was like, no thanks. I'm not even right. You're not even on my radar of caring of what you have to say to me.
Yeah. So the biggest thing I've noticed doing this work over almost I think you might actually be episode 100. I don't know. I lost count. I do so many of these damn things, but stepping back, taking a few steps back and really, I know we've discussed this privately, but the bullshit of the priming that goes on in the TAPS class, the puffing up of your chest and telling you're a veteran now, you can get whatever job that you want. They're gonna be chomping at the bit to get you probably heard, and I know you got out in, when did you get out? 12? 11. I know in 15 when I got out, they were saying the same things, right? Like, so I'm sure they were probably pushing the same narrative 4 years before when you got out. I followed their plan to a fucking T, and it did not help me in the slightest even become a little bit competitive to getting a job. I went and got the 4-year degree with exhausting my education benefits and VR&E, and I did all their things, and I did all their interview preps, and I still ended up on my own in the insurance industry getting treated like shit.
Well, the best piece of advice I got was before I even left Bragg.
Okay.
I was at Bragg, and there was the career E6 ops infantry guy.
I know that guy.
We all know that guy.
I could tell you his name right now if you'd like,
probably,
but I don't want to out him like that.
I can tell you this guy's name because that's how ingrained in my memory what he said was. The guy that loves to talk and never shuts up. And I'd say even a broken clock is right twice a day, because he said something to me that I heard, and it profoundly changed my transition. Because he told me, I told him, I don't know if I'm PCSing to Benning. I don't know what I'm doing after that. And he said, let me give you a piece of advice. If you choose to get out, stay out. Burn the boats, burn the bridge. Do not consider. It's like, I see so many kids getting out of here at 22, E5s. And I say, well, what happens when the transition? What are you going to go do? I'm going to go to school. I'm going to go conquer the world. I'm going to go make all this money, whatever. And he asked, and he said, and I ask every single one of them, what are you going to do when it gets tough? When the plan doesn't go according to plan? Well, if I'm within this time, I can just come back in and get my rank back and come back in the Army. And he said to me, he's like, and I tell every one of them, just go to the reenlistment office and reenlist now and save yourself the hassle of getting that taste of civilian life. Because if you're gonna get out, stay out. Because if this is your backup plan, you're going to do it, because this is too comfortable to come back to if you're struggling.
Yeah.
So when I got out with an MBA from Auburn, bachelor's of economics from San Diego State as an E6. I was a unicorn in the world of vets, because how many enlisted guys do you know that get out with master's degrees? Never mind bachelor's.
None.
So I was out there. I was thinking I'm going to go conquer the world just like everyone else, but I'm prepared. I've got my MBA. And while I'm working at that Auburn student athlete library telling athletes to shut up, I'm getting calls from National Guard and from reserve units saying, hey, we need an E6 to come in. It's non-deployable for 3 years. You'd work in ops. And we all know non-deployable for Guard means you're not deploying to Iraq. You'll go on a training mission to some God knows horrible place elsewhere.
Right. Djibouti.
Yeah, exactly. So every time I got one of those calls, I'd listen to it, but I'd say, no, I'm out. And then I go back to telling athletes to shut up.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
I think it's such good advice, man, because I know I saw it as a leader before I got out. I, in fact, had a kid tell me his plan was to go to college and I'm going to do X, Y, Z. And 18 months later, the kid is coming right back to the same platoon he had ETS from. And I'm not the only one that has stories like that. I'm sure you probably saw that. I would get calls from dudes who served under me or whatever, however you want to phrase that, 18 months, 2 years later, like, hey, Sir Peters, are you still at Fort Lewis? Are you still with 123? Like, hey, man, I'm coming back in the Army and I'm coming to Fort Lewis. Is there any pull that you have? Can you go talk to somebody and see if I can get back to ACO? And I'm like, yeah, dude, no, I don't know people like that here. It's just
we don't know people like that.
Yeah, I tried to fucking warn you before you got out, and I tried to tell you that that's not a plan and that I better not see you back in the Army, yet here you are, and you're calling me, of all people. Probably not going to be able to help you because you didn't want my help to begin with. You thought you had it figured out. And I remember this particular soldier really well because he basically told me I was full of shit and that's not going to be him. And then, 24 months later, here he is calling me. It's like, oh, I thought that wasn't going to be you, buddy. You know what I mean? In a different version of myself where I would have treated him like shit because, that's what we did. But it's really important, man. And I think you're right. Get out and stay out, burn the bridges. And that translates into so many other areas that we fail in transition. Somebody like me, I didn't join at 24. I joined at 17. So I never had an opportunity to discover who I was as a human being through life experience because I literally left high school and living at home to really now the Army's my parents and I'm living, at the Army's house. And they're going to turn me into whatever version of me they want me to be. So I never really discovered who I was. So my entire identity was wrapped up in the Army and being an infantryman. And that's not healthy. And that's what hamstrings a lot of our transitions out and prevents us from just doing exceptional things on the outside, as I'm now discovering, as you're discovering. And, I think it's important to burn those bridges.
There's one thing, though, that I say this only because we both were in at the same time. Infantry, we experienced, there was a lot of patriotism during that time.
Oh, yes.
But there was also a lot of strong opinions.
Yeah.
Because I distinctly remember there were times where I was afraid to tell someone I was infantry and I'd been to Iraq a couple of times, because I'd been called baby killer. I've been called murderer. I've been called all those names to my face by people that didn't care. And, well, fast forward a couple of years, I was working for a small company that they sold overpriced clothes in college towns. And I ran their e-commerce department, and there are certain times in my life that they're seared into my brain as the memories they are there, because they were so impactful. And I'm going to tell you a story, and I know you're going to laugh at this because you've experienced the same one, just little bit different circumstances.
All right,
so
let's hear it.
I'm talking to our district manager. He's in his office. I'm leaning up against the door, just BSing with him, shooting it, just doing whatever. He's like, "Hey, you were in the Army, right?" And this is probably a year and a half, maybe 2 years after I got out. It's like, "Yeah, I was in. What's up?" Like, what'd you do in the Army? It was infantry. What's that? Oh, we kick in the door and we go get the bad guys. Oh, so, did you ever, I'm like, yes, I went to Iraq 3 times. Oh, well, did you ever kill anyone?
Yep, there it is. Knew it was coming.
No. But wait, just hear this one. So I'm like, okay, I'm not going to dignify that with a response, because that's not an appropriate question to ask someone.
Right.
So you did kill someone. Once again, I'm not going to engage in that. And I might, my responses might not be verbatim, but they were the gist of this. So you didn't kill anyone. I already told you I'm not answering that question. So you did. And that's when I just turned around and walked out of the door, because I couldn't help that situation.
Right.
And I tell that story only because we've all been there. But the thing that really was the hardest about the transition was the lack of knowledge, the inability to appreciate service versus non-service. And I'm not saying one is better than the other, but I think it was Nick Palmisano said this probably, I heard this statistic, he said this statistic probably 15 years ago when I heard it. So it's probably even crazier now. But it was something to the effect of, after World War II, every civilian knew multiple service members firsthand.
Yes.
Then you fast forward to Vietnam, and it was every civilian knew one military member of some sort. Then Korea, it was one step removed.
Mm-hmm.
Now we get to the GWAT, and I think 15 years ago, it was like 2 or 3 steps removed.
Yeah.
So when you start, one of the things I try to preach to people is, we as vets are unicorns in a way. And especially when you talk about combat arms, the military is less than 1%. Combat arms is less than 1% of that 1%.
Yeah.
Or is it 3% maybe, something?
It's very, very small.
It's a very minimal number of people. For the number of people that deployed in the GWAT and the number of people that served in combat arms or not in combat arms, it doesn't matter. But when you start talking about these numbers and shrinking them down to fractions of a percent of the population, and we wonder why we're so misunderstood, it's because we're unicorns to some of these people. I I say this all the time that I wonder what my kids are going to learn about in history classes because I've got a 6 and 7-year-old.
I wonder that all the time too, man.
I wonder
Because I
what's gonna be.
remember reading history books about World War II and Korea and Vietnam, and understanding when you're living through it, like you're going to be in the history books or in theory, right? And they're going to teach about this, but what are they going to teach?
It's not even that. It's my kids come home from school and they're talking about the GWAT, and I'm sitting there reading some of these stories. And I'm like, that is wrong because I was there.
Right.
Like one of my wife's uncles was drafted in Vietnam as an infantryman. And before I started coming around, it was kind of one of those things that everyone knew, but no one really talked about. No one really said anything about it. And he's a well-adjusted, normal dude. Like he's not shell-shocked or any of that stuff. But they said after I started coming around, after she started bringing me around, and I think I might have been on active duty or transitioning out at the time, but engaging with me, he started actually being more open about where he had been, what he had done, that he was actually acknowledging he was in the military, all those things, just because he was around a friend that understood what he had done.
Yeah.
And it's just, I say we're magnets to each other because we are. Like we just find each other. I'm waiting for the time when I go to something for my kid's school on Veterans Day and I start talking to someone and I'm like, oh, you were there. This even happened to me. I was at a security meeting. I'm a part of a physical security group. Every month we meet and I'm sitting there talking to this guy, just met him. And we're talking, oh yeah, you were in the Army. You were a intel guy. I was in the Army, Oh, when did you deploy? Oh, I was in Iraq at the same time. Who are you with? Second ID? Well, we had some second ID guys attached to us. We had a Stryker Brigade. Oh, you were the intel guy for the Stryker Brigade that was attached to us. And we started talking about some stuff that didn't happen.
Right.
But it was just, those are the chance encounters that we run into. Kind of like how you run into people you met overseas as attachments. You'll run into them on a post 3 years later and recognize them and be like, where do I know you from?
Dude, I'm running into them doing this show. Believe it or not, it's interesting.
I'm on a mentoring platform. I saw a guy there. I thought his name sounded familiar. So I booked some time to talk to him. And, we got on. Hey, how's it going? How's it going? I have a question for you before we get started. Were you a White Falcon from 04 to 07? Yes, I was. Oh, then you are who I thought you were. And we were talking, catching up, telling stories. He works for a very large organization that's notoriously hard to get into. And halfway through the conversation, I was like, do you need to know anything about me or my background or anything to feel comfortable referring me? He's like, no, you were in the battalion with me. We're good. Just say the word and I'll refer you in a heartbeat for anything you need.
Media-based power, man.
That's the power that we hold. We hold this entire community in our hands because we all raised our hand, we all served, we all did our part. And I don't think that we value what we've done as a community enough and the power that we have in numbers of people everywhere.
I would challenge you. I don't necessarily think it's about us valuing it. It's we don't know how to leverage it. And I think that's becoming more and more apparent the more and more of these that I do is, it's just confusing as fuck, man. It's confusing to navigate the civilian world when you come from a life, particularly more than a decade of structure, of everybody has a boss, of all, the way the machine works, particularly if you did it when you were young, like I was, and you become indoctrinated to that, right? Like that became my entire modus operandi because it's all I had, from 17 to 30 years old. I didn't have a college experience to really come into my own as an individual going to parties and having unprotected sex and all of that. Yeah, you do that in the Army as a private and all of that, but it's just very different because the stakes are a lot higher. The expectations are a lot higher. You still have kind of all these things that you're responsible for. I mean, fuck, dude, at one point I was an E3 team leader. Like, that's not something to scoff at. You know what I mean? Like you're not an E3 team leader in fucking college. Like, it's just not how it goes.
But were you able to explain that? That's the gap. Like,
yeah, exactly.
When I got out, my most proud achievement was passing Jumpmaster school.
Mm-hmm.
And I had a pitch of what a Jumpmaster did to explain that to a civilian in civilian language that would show the responsibility that a Jumpmaster has.
Right.
I can't remember it now, but it was important to me back then because that was a way to convey. I was in charge of an aircraft with 64 soldiers.
Mm-hmm.
I was in charge of their safety, their well-being, and controlling the flow of the entire aircraft as one of two people as the primary or alternate jump master. I was responsible for inspecting their equipment, for checking to make sure everyone was safe. All those different things that you can use those buzzwords. And that's where I think that we're failing the future generation is not preparing them with the tools of what they've done.
Yeah. The translation of the skill to something that resonates in the corporate world. Yeah, for sure.
I was mentoring in a cohort, and we did mock interviews where we were asked sample questions, and there was a guy that was getting ready to get out, and he was asked a question about something, and he gave this full answer in military language. And I said, you need to demilitarize that. He's like, what do you mean? I'm like, take every single thing that you said about the military out, because anytime you bring that up in a job interview, unless you're talking to somebody else who was in the military, they have zero clue what you just said. And they are tuning out after the first time you say soldier, because, so he changed it all around and stumbled through it because he wasn't prepared for it. But then I said, do you hear the difference?
Right.
Like, yeah, I do. It sounds a lot more impressive. I was like, exactly. Because we take for granted a lot of the things that we do in the military as that's just the job.
Right.
And we don't understand.
Yeah. And apparently you figured this out because now you're, let's be real. You're a pretty big influence in the project management space. And that's only going to grow with time. Don't give me any pushback because I won't accept it because I know the whole story. So just accept the compliment right now. Why project management? What got you into project management? Was that something, was that a product of you going through the MBA at Auburn? What was it something? How do I even ask this? Because I'm kind of a fucking idiot, right? Like everybody knows that I'm not smart, but what even is project management? I've had conversations with people. I don't know if you've met Tyler Schmacher yet. He's a great dude. He explained this to me one time about project management and how everybody in the military wants to slap project management on a resume and say that they're good at it, but they don't have a fucking clue how it works. He's an amazing dude. I loved having him on the show. I'm going to be bringing him back here shortly to have more conversations with what he's doing with Winsley and everything else. But, that was really eye-opening for me because I see these. I've been through an LSS green belt and black belt course. I have my green belt and black belt. That's more product stuff, not people stuff. Project management seems to be more people focused, I guess, and not kind of.
Let me.
I don't know. This shit's all just boring to me. Is really what it comes down to.
Let me take something that I'm pretty sure you're familiar with, and I'm going to relate it back to a post that I made on LinkedIn probably 2 weeks ago. CrossFit, right?
Yeah.
CrossFit was one of the best things for the fitness community, and it was one of the worst things at the same time, because when CrossFit came around, I was a marginal at best Olympic style weightlifter. I was not great. I was, face facts, but it's a sport that's highly technical, that's designed to lift the most weight in one repetition for two different lifts, two different exercises.
Mm-hmm.
CrossFit took those two exercises, put them in the middle of a cycle, a middle of a workout, combined with gymnastics, like 4 or 5 other different disciplines, took those 2 lifts from Olympic weightlifting that were designed for singles, put them as, do that for 30, and we're going to put a clock on you.
Mm-hmm.
So project management is kind of that same way. We take a little bit from here, a little bit from there, and then we combine it all into one pretty package that, as you said, you can't that nobody really knows what we do. But what we do is we're effective communicators, because you have to be able to communicate with teams, because you lead through influence rather than leading through authority.
So why don't we just say that? Why don't we just say we fucking manage teams?
Because we have to make it complicated. We have to make ourselves sound elusive and cool and rationalize that everybody can do this, when in reality, not everybody can do it, but not everybody can be successful at it.
Right. I just think that if you say you're a project manager manages teams, if you say that, that translates way better to what we coming out of the military may be capable of. I'm with you. Yeah. I don't think that everybody, but that's a direct translation in my mind. It's like, oh, you're going to manage teams. Well, I know how to manage teams. I was a fucking squad leader. I was a platoon sergeant. I was a fucking first sergeant, right? Like that's just managing teams.
PMI is the governing body for project management. They're kind of they're the ones who own the PMP. Mm-hmm. That's project management professional. That's kind of the gold standard for project managers that everyone has to have to check the block. And I'm going to give the textbook definitions only because it makes sense in this case. Normally, I hate quoting the PMBOK because it's worthless. The PMBOK is the project management body of knowledge. It's kind of the Bible for project managers. A project is a unique endeavor that has a defined start, finish, and goal. That's a project.
Mm-hmm.
Now, do you know what a project manager is defined as by PMI?
Probably somebody who oversees those different things.
No.
Of course it wouldn't be. Why would it be?
No. The project manager is the person responsible for making sure the project is completed. Now, the difference here's where the difference comes in. The word responsible. It is not our job to complete the tasks, to get the job done, to do anything other than make sure everybody does what they're supposed to do. Be an NCO, be a leader.
Yeah.
Your job is to be, I equate it to being a conduit, because you've got to manage up to your stakeholders and leaders. And then you've got to manage down to your team, and you're the go-to person for both of them. So you've got to be able to translate. You've got to be able to translate all the subject matter experts you've got going on, telling you all the stuff that you don't understand, because I'm too dumb to understand most of that stuff. But I've got to be able to understand it enough to be able to explain it to leadership, to say, this is what's going on. This is why we can't do this. This is why we can do this. Or this is why that's a terrible idea of what you just suggested to me.
Yeah, that makes sense. That definitely clears it up.
Management.
Yeah, that clears it up a lot better than, you just see, and I know you know what I'm talking about, because we've had this conversation also, as you see project manager, and then you look at the roles and responsibilities and you're like, I don't really understand what you're driving here. Like, why don't you just simplify this for me so that my dumb infantry brain can understand what you want from me, and then I'll go execute.
That's what inspired my PM Monday posts.
Yeah. I remember that conversation with you.
I created that I'm surrounded by project managers. I can talk nuance, details, all the stupid minutia stuff all day long with those people. And I'm fine with that. But what about the people around the office when you say, hey, we're going more agile? And everyone's like, yeah, we're going more agile. But then if you ask them, do you know what agile is? Well, it just means we're moving faster. No. Let's bring this back to where I like to make my posts are written in the way I talk, and I try and explain a concept, so I'm drawing it with crayons, because I want to explain it. I want to explain it to the average person. My audience is not my peers, because my peers, I can tell them in all the PM jargon, all the PM talk, and we all get it. There's so much out there about people arguing over minutia and details and all this. But going back to weightlifting, coaches will argue about the minutia of some of those techniques. But if you ask one of the coaches that's arguing over where ideal bar placement is, or whether you impact your hips or your thighs, or how fast your turnover is, or any of those things in a clean, and then you say to that coach, explain to me what a clean is, that no one is. So for someone who has no idea what a clean is, they've never seen the Olympics, they've never seen the sport, and you just watch their brains break because they can't zoom out enough to say it's taking the bar to your chest through basically a front squat, and that paints a picture of what a clean looks like, right?
Right.
But if you're arguing over all the details, sometimes you can't zoom out enough to just say that, so that the village idiot understands.
Right. Well, that being said, let's talk about what you're doing now, and why what does the future for Trevor Greenberg look like right now, and what are you going to be doing in the project management space to help kind of alleviate some of these problems?
Well, come here, come closer. I got a secret for you.
Yeah. What's the secret?
Well, tomorrow there's a pretty big announcement coming. Me and my co-host, whose name is Daniel Hemhauser, he is the #1 content producer for project management on LinkedIn. We are announcing our podcast, Two Disgruntled PMs.
Oh, I can't wait for this. I'm so excited for this.
And he is also an Army vet. And the thing about it that we're doing that's different is we aren't talking about the PMBOK. We aren't talking about this is what a best practice is and why you should do it. We're talking about close to 30 years of experience as project managers. We're talking about all those mistakes we made along the way, all the cracking jokes that all the PMs understand about. A stakeholder comes to you with the good idea fairy and says, "I shouldn't be that big of a deal, right?" We're talking about how you handle problems in the real world based off of the real world experience. And we're treating this whole thing like a project.
Which is the coolest part, by the way. Just so you know, that's the coolest part.
We are breaking the fourth wall. We're planning to show our project plan. We're showing how we're going from the humble beginnings of two guys that don't know anything about podcasting all the way through to going from the most basic of basic setups to where we envision having to upgrade equipment, having to buy new mics, having to buy better webcams, having to do all this stuff. Like, we're starting with just audio, and we got to figure out, how do we do video? How do we make this work? How do we do all of this stuff while we're building this show? And we plan on having guests on, and we're bringing in people that we both consider friends that we like to talk to, and they don't have to be project managers. We're bringing in people that, hey, you do something that we've never seen before. Let's talk about how you didn't realize you were using some of our best practices without even knowing it. Because, like I said, it's like CrossFit. We borrow from things. We don't project management is its own discipline for a reason, but that doesn't mean it's exclusive to only project management. We borrow from everywhere, just like every other profession does. I'm just the one that's willing to admit it.
Hey, that's going to take you far, man. When's the first episode dropping?
14th of April.
April 14th. I know it will be. It'll be on all major podcast platforms because I know the network you're hosting on, and I know the owner of that network. I guess, man, all that's left to do to wrap this up, Trevor, is tell everybody how they can find your podcast, how they can reach out to you on social media for project management related questions, or because you're just a hell of a dude who's fun to talk to.
The podcast, we have the LinkedIn page up. It's called Two Disgruntled PMs. Spelled just like it sounds. And And we made that because if you're in the industry long enough, you're going to get frustrated. You're going to get irritated dealing with people. But we're both passionate about this profession. We chose this. We may not have chosen this life to start with, but we chose to stay in it. We chose to keep doing this because it's something that we enjoy doing and we enjoy sharing it.
I'm excited for you guys, man. And I want you both to know I haven't met your co-host, but whatever I can do to help you along that journey, provide insights for your podcast, whatever that looks like, please reach out to me. I'm happy to help. Dude, really appreciate you being here and doing this today. I know that you, whether you want me to out you or not, I know that you were extremely nervous to do this, but hopefully this took the edge off for you and really like shows you that, you know, there's nothing to it but to do it, man. It's a lot of fun to have these conversations, particularly I pride myself on the way I do it, never knowing where the conversation is really going to go. And I think it always provides a ton of value, or at least that's the feedback I get from guests and people who listen to the show. So I really appreciate your time and willingness to do this. I really appreciate you choosing this platform to announce your next endeavor on. That means the world to me, whether you realize that or not. I built this platform to help our brothers and sisters get to where they want to go within reason, obviously. And so it's my pleasure to be able to do that for you guys. And like I said, whatever support you need from me, man, I'm there. I'm there for it. I want to see you guys be successful. I hope that in your first 3 months, you do better than this podcast has done. And I think that you're off to a great start. So kudos to you, man. Thank you for doing this. Ladies and gentlemen, I give you Mr. Trevor Greenberg. Please don't forget to like, rate, review, subscribe, download, all that wonderful stuff. We're not going to make my goal of getting this in front of 1 million veterans before I turn 40 because, well, you know, it's a lofty goal and people are lazy and don't want to hit the share button, I guess. Whatever, that is what it is. Don't forget, I have a free community called The Stronghold. I'm not driving engagement in there. That's a member-driven community. There's a ton of resources in there. I'm adding new resources just about on a weekly basis. Really awesome stuff coming. Potential partnership with Onlux coming, a red light therapy device company who sent me some samples of some stuff to try out. I'll be having hip surgery on the 11th, so it's going to be a perfect time to try out this new healing modality and share my feedback with you guys. My goal with everything in the community is to provide a space that's the antithesis of Facebook, where you can come talk about the challenges you're going through with other veterans who are in transition, building businesses, whatever that looks like, who've walked a mile in your shoes, and aren't going to beat you down for asking questions, but are going to give you honest insights in how they got through whatever challenge you may be talking about in there. Also to provide resources that are, you know, a little bit more nuanced that you're not going to get in a TAP class, that you're not going to get on a VA website. Things like Discover Reality, talking about you know, veteran ready AI, you know, the Onlux stuff. I've got 7 Eagle Group in there. You know, we've got some veteran business owners in there who have given some pretty significant discounts to their services in there. So I would encourage you all to come and join. Let's just make the world a better place. And again, the community's there to act as the guy I didn't have when I transitioned. And so if you comment and you at me, I will answer it. I enjoy interacting with you guys. So please do that. And until next week, we'll see you guys. Take care.
Hey, Adam, can I add one more resource to your list?
Of course.
Best military resume.
Oh, yeah, Brad's in there for sure. Brad's a member of the community, and BMR. Yeah, man. There's so many in there in the resources tab that I can't off the top of my head rattle them all, particularly as I add more. But yeah, BMR is such a great tool. If you guys haven't seen it, basically you upload your resume and AI will take care of
you don't upload your resume. Remember, his doesn't let you. You have to put it all in manually because he wants you to actually enter it in. And
that's right. And
it's
a really cool tool anyway.
Plus, he's got the LinkedIn stuff that really helps out a lot with, if you don't know how to write something out, it demilitarizes it. Like, yeah. I've been out for so long. I don't need that help personally, but I know a lot of people that do. Yeah. And if you put it into ChatGPT, it's not written by one of us.
For sure.
It's written by somebody who understands what we say to be able to translate it effectively.
Correct. Anyway, the point remains, Brad Tachi from Best Military Resume, he's a resource in there as well. There's too many to list, so if I forgot you and you're partnered with me, I apologize. I'll do better next time. But again, thanks, Trevor, for being here. Thanks for your friendship and for the back and forth just privately all the time. Whether you know it or not, it's good for me. And take care, everybody. We'll see you next week.